Franklin County Commissioners meeting, April 30th, 2019.
Regular Tuesday board meeting, April 30th. We are a full complement of commissioners this morning, along with Keith, our administrator, and Karen, our clerk. If you would join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I just remembered my cell phone is still on, so if everybody would quiet theirs, please. So our first item is Ben Franklin Transit presentation. Gloria Boyce.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for having me this morning. I'm Gloria Boyce. I'm the General Manager at Ben Franklin Transit. With me today, I'd like to introduce two new executive staff at Ben Franklin Transit in 2018.
Mic closer to you, Gloria, please. I don't know if you can hear back. Jim,
is that
can you
better?
hear? Thank you.
With me today, I'd like to introduce two new executive staff members that joined us in 2018. We have Allie Madison, who joined us in January. She's our new Director of Communications and Public Affairs. And Mr. Keith Hall, he is the Director of our Service Development and Planning, and he joined us in November. I'm here today in the spirit of collaboration and community to provide both a brief overview of BFT for those that may find it helpful and an update on our efforts in 2018 and going forward. Let's see here. Just a brief history. Ben Franklin Transit was established by public vote in 1981. Our guiding purpose is to provide safe, reliable, affordable transportation to the community in support of personal mobility, economic diversity, and area growth. We receive over 80% of our operating revenue from a 6% sales tax, 6% of 1% local sales tax allocation, with additional funding from fare collection, state and federal formula and competitive grants, and a small amount of other sources such as fleet advertising revenue. In 2018, our total revenues were just over $45 million, with expenses at just over $40 million. Any surplus funds go towards capital investments in our fleet, facilities, or technology, which is also where a fair amount of our grant funding goes. Transit has a very real impact in communities, including tremendous economic benefit. For instance, every $1 invested in public transportation generates $4 in economic returns. About 71% of public funding for public transportation flows to the private sector, creating and supporting hundreds of thousands of jobs across the nation, and home values perform approximately 42% better when located near high-frequency public transit routes. The operations of BFT and public transit agencies nationally are governed primarily by the Federal Transit Administration. We have compliance requirements around every facet of our operations, including the service we offer and how we provide them. As in many industries, the compliance aspect of what we do is growing. I'll touch on that again shortly. BFT operates in what is called a Public Transit Benefit Area, or PTBA, that covers 616 square miles here in both Franklin and Benton counties, serving seven cities and certain unincorporated areas. The population within this service area is approximately 300,000 and growing very quickly. Our bus operators and dial ride drivers travel more than 4.5 million miles annually, providing service to our community. In 2018, this resulted in over 3.1 million completed passenger trips. BFT is overseen by a 10-member board comprised of representatives from the jurisdictions we serve, which appoints a general manager to lead the agency. At the end of 2018, we had 330 employees, over 3/4 of which drive and maintain our fleet. Our 227 drivers and operators are dispersed throughout the community 6 days a week, and our 32 maintenance staff work shifts around the clock to help keep the fleet operating safely and looking its best, and our 71 administrative staff cover the many operational support functions. I would like to point out that in 2018, 159 of our drivers and operators received National Safety Council recognition for completing at least 1 year free of preventable accidents on the road and on board their vehicles. 74 of those were recognized for at least 10 years accident-free. And our longest tenured operator retired in 2018 after 36 years at Ben Franklin Transit and 32 years without a single preventative accident, which is a testament to the care and skill these professionals bring to not only their work but to the community as well. Here's an overview of the services BFT offers, including those we operate directly and user-operated programs that we facilitate. We currently have 17 routes served by our fleet of 75 buses, which connect throughout the PTBA with the exceptions of a few areas, including in Findlay, Benton City, Prosser, and a few pockets within the Tri-City proper. We also operate the Dial-A-Ride service, which provides pre-scheduled door-to-door transport for individuals with qualifying disabilities that preclude them from riding the bus. Per the FTA, the bus system and Dial-A-Ride paratransit services are complementary and must run in tandem. In 2018, Dial-A-Ride provided just under 300,000 rides. BFT also operates a general demand service using our Dial-A-Ride vehicles and drivers, which provides pre-scheduled point-to-point rides between outlying areas and the bus network. We were already providing the service in Benton City and Prosser and launched the service in Findlay and Tri-Cities proper early this year after the loss of our former contracted taxi services in those areas. We also have a thriving van pool program with 243 active groups by the end of 2018. Through ride sharing, these 2,100 commuters reduced daily vehicle counts on the road by 1,857, and annual mileage traveled from 21 million to just 3.5 million in 2018. BFT also facilitates a community van program, which allows local nonprofits to use a BFT van and pay per mile for its use. In 2018, 6 organizations took advantage of this program for 15 different events. Newly approved by our board for 2019 is our Van Me Down program, which allows local nonprofits to purchase vans in good repair but past their mandated service life for $250. This allows well-operating vehicles purchased with help from public tax dollars to stay in our community and continue providing local benefits rather than going to auction. I'm proud to report that we have approved 10 applications for this new program so far this year. Before I move on, I'd also like to note that with the addition of 60 new vehicles in 2018, our fleet is now officially up to federal standards for age and mileage, which is referred to as being in a state of good repair. Ben Franklin Transit has not attained this state of good repair since 1992, and we've been working at it for many years. Along with the opportunity to right-size our bus fleet by ordering some different bus lengths so we could match their size to our route demand more effectively. The list you see here on who we serve represents the basic rider groups we serve in our community. The whole idea behind public transportation is that it's truly there for everyone. At the end of the list, you see the term choice riders, which are those who don't have a specific need to ride public transit, but who choose to do so either on a regular or periodic basis. We have professionals who work at PNNL and commute by bus daily, and we have some who ride the bus once per year when we offer shuttle to local events, including Art in the Park, the boat races, or the fair. Youth make up about 30% of our ridership, primarily riding to attend school and related activities. In addition to education, those who ride transit routinely are connected to work, healthcare, retail, and recreation. We refer to these as life-enabling opportunities for which affordable, reliable transportation is critical. How we serve. In Franklin County, here's a snapshot of our service in your jurisdiction. In Pasco, we have 7 established routes and 2 demonstration routes that we launched on a trial basis in 2018. One provides service in East Pasco as far as the Tierra Vida community, and one provides weekday service in West Pasco with stops near 7 schools. Our busiest stops in Franklin County are located on 20th Avenue and at the CBC College, Columbia Basin College, would indicate we have a very high student ridership in Pasco, most prominently among college students. We have a partnership in place with CBC that gives every enrolled student unlimited rides using a sticker on their student ID, and will continue to look for other such opportunities to help students make their important connections. Of our 243 van groups, 48 originate in Pasco, 24 of which also have their final destinations in Pasco, and another 24 groups arrive to Pasco each day from other cities. We have unique operating conditions in transit. These create some challenges that it's important for our community to be aware of. First, the majority of our staff spend 100% of their time on the road, and that we operate to some degree 24 hours a day, 6 days a week. This makes things like building a strong internal culture especially challenging. To help with this, we made a series of investments in our workforce in 2018, including for staff development and engagement programs that will continue this year and beyond. We also have many and varied requirements on the compliance side of our operations, including from the FTA, as I mentioned earlier, but also when it comes to state and regional governance. In 2018, we achieved the FTA State of Good Repair standard, as well as finalized a required long-term transit asset management plan. We also completed and submit a 6-year transit development plan each year, which becomes part of the regional transportation plan that rises to the state level plan. And as we speak, we are in the process of an FTA triennial review, which is a deep dive audit overseen by the FTA every 3 years that examines every facet of our operations. As in many industries, cost containment is a big deal in transit. Just for one example, when you go through 1 million gallons of fuel per year, fluctuations in gas prices become a very big deal. Operating a transit system is expensive by its very construct and scale, and the requirement that we cover an entire service area that varies in its usage habits. We really pay close attention to cost containment and stay as lean as we can. We also have a changing transportation landscape that I think we're all aware of in some respects. In transit, we have varying levels of control over things like ridership behavior. In some cases, there are things we can do that have shown direct impact on ridership, such as modernizing system amenities, streamlining routes, improving on-time performance, and increasing route frequency. But there are many other factors where we have limited or no control, including the competitive landscape, consumer preferences, economic accessibility of personal vehicles, and local and regional development impacts on successful public transit deliveries. Innovations and partnerships when it comes to land use, transit-oriented development, and infrastructure will only become more critical as our community continues growing. We are highly interested in partnering with you and all of our local jurisdictions to help pave the way, pun intended. I want to touch on a few key things that have happened at VFT over the past year or so, which are included in our annual report in a little more detail. As some of you may be aware, we made major system changes in late 2017, which included streamlining our bus routes for better efficiencies and adding later service hours to the tune of about 28,000 revenue hours more per year. I mentioned that we added 60 new vehicles to our fleet in 2018, allowing us to surplus vehicles that we made sure had long outlasted their scheduled lifespan. This brought us current on our fleet, and we'll continue managing those life cycles per our federal guidelines. We also made and continue to make significant technology investments at BFT to bring our operational systems current and give us much better, more accurate, and real-time data that is allowing us to gain sufficient operational efficiencies. One of the things we're most proud of as a result of this investment was improvement on our average on-time performance from 82 to 91% in 2018 alone, which is a huge driver of bus ridership. I mentioned the 2 demonstration routes we launched in Pasco in 2018, which will both be coming up for analysis in the very near future. We also operated a demonstration trolley route in Columbia Park last summer. Running test routes like these is a good FTA-approved way for us to assess demand for new service and make adjustments before making permanent changes. We've also just launched the third of 3 new service offerings approved by our board for introduction this year on a demonstration basis. The first 2 were the general demand services in Findlay and Tri-Cities that I touched on earlier. And on March 11th, we further extended service hours for most bus routes and dial-a-ride services to 10 p.m. This is an extra 2 hours on weeknights and 3 hours on Saturdays that we're excited to offer our community and which should open doors for people in terms of how they can use our services. We spent most of 2018 gathering our first full year of benchmark ridership data following our 2017 system overhaul. By October, we had 1 full year of data to start comparing to moving forward, and we started to see signs of usage going in the right direction. We're hoping this becomes a trend, but are encouraged that what we might be witnessing are positive results from a lot of blood, sweat, and tears put in by a lot of really great people at BFT the past few years. We will continue watching and building on this success. It's all about ridership. In 2019, we have some exciting facility modernization efforts coming, such as starting to plan for 3 new multimodal transit centers, a phased rollout of clean, modern bus shelters, and other system amenities, as well as continued investments in technology. We'll also continue efforts around staff development and agency succession planning, especially important as our industry faces a potentially devastating percentage of retirements over the years ahead. And we'll complete our federal triennial review and update our strategic plan this year as well. As we do all of this, we must also be mindful of where our industry is headed and prepare ourselves to get on board with new approaches. Our industry is headed towards something referred to as mobility as a service, which is a broader way of looking at and providing transportation. We're also seeing the push towards alternative fuels, and transit systems around the country are already operating pilot programs with autonomous vehicles. We'll continue to do the hard work to bring Ben Franklin Transit current, keep evolving to meet our community needs as fully and efficiently as possible, and keep our eyes down the road as well. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate the chance to share with you in the interest of maintaining open communication and fostering collaboration. I'll be leaving copies of the 2018 annual report, which you have in front of you, and would be happy to provide any additional information you might request. Thank you.
Questions, Norman?
Good morning. Thanks for taking time to come in. I don't remember somebody from Transit coming in the last few years, so it's a nice change. Appreciate you being here. Just a few sort of general interest questions quickly. I was looking at your expenses. You said, or your chart said 6% of the annual expenses are fuel, which is about $2.4 million. Just curious, does Transit pay taxes on the motor vehicle fuel? I'm assuming you buy it in bulk and you store it and dispense it on site.
It is a non-taxable.
It's not taxable?
No.
Okay. You mentioned that housing values perform better near transit routes, and you cited a number of 42%. Is that for, do you know offhand, for a particular class of housing, or is that just all housing in general?
That's all housing in general, and that's a national statistic.
Okay. There's, so I think it's the third slide, industry and agency. It references 3.1 million passenger trips. Is that passengers or boardings? And is there a difference?
There is not a difference. That is boardings.
That's
Boardings
boarding.
and passenger trips are counted as the same.
Okay, so if I get on a bus at point A, I go to the transfer station, I get off that bus and get on another bus and ride that to my destination. Is that one trip, one boarding, or is
That is two boardings,
Okay, and is that 2 trips?
2 trips.
So every time you step on and off, that's a boarding is a trip.
It
okay.
is. Mm-hmm.
Great. Let's see. Okay, skip that. Covered the fuel. On your, excuse me, your progress chart in which you were showing van pool ridership, dial ride, and bus, I'm sure you knew this question was coming. You only showed fourth quarter numbers for bus ridership, but the other 2, van pool and dial ride, are annualized numbers.
That's correct.
What's the annual number for bus ridership?
We do not yet have that comparison because the system changed so drastically in September of 2017 that to compare apples to apples, we only listed in this presentation the fourth quarter of 2017 as a comparable.
So the van pool and dial ride routes didn't change, but the buses did?
The bus did, yes.
And did we add additional routes?
We did not. We actually slimmed down a couple of school tripper routes and streamlined the existing routes.
So we reduced by 2 routes, was it?
No, actually I think it was 3, maybe 4 school trippers, Commissioner Peck.
Okay. So just trying to understand, I don't know what a school tripper is. Is that a regular daily route during the school week?
It is to get the kids to and from schools. So we put out a school tripper that has heavy loads as they travel back and forth to school to accommodate that.
Yeah. And when you count your ridership, you count that by route, don't you?
Yes, we now have the technology to really have accurate count by route productivity.
Yeah. Did you have that ability in 2017?
We did, but it was manual, and so we've gone now to automation, which is really giving us more efficient counts and can give us more information in terms of where they get on and where they get off and at what times of day.
Sure. So I've heard a lot of discussion in the community, and without taking a position or a side, there's some folks that think that ridership is up, some think it's down. Would it be terribly difficult to get a roster by route showing the riders in 17 and 18, and then I can parse out the routes that were eliminated just so that I can assure myself that what I'm hearing, I know what to believe and what not to?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then just lastly, and this is more of a general thing, you said for the future the concept is mobility as a service. That sounds an awful lot like what you're trying to do now, I think, mobility as a service. And I would just close by asking if we were to ask you, what do you think, as the leader of this organization, what do you think is the number one benefit to the community of BFT? I'm assuming you could make a list, but what do you think is number one?
I think it is providing mobility for the transit dependent.
Okay, thank you.
Anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to ask a couple questions on the very last screen right here, autonomous vehicles. You're wanting to move to that, but you're bragging on your employees, and Ben Franklin is a source of jobs I would really hate to see us go to that. If we're employing people in the Tri-Cities and they're making a good wage, I really don't see why we want to move into that area with our buses. And then the alternative fuels, I believe you're talking about going into battery-operated buses too, correct?
Electric vehicles.
Yeah, which I hate to say make that move too, because we've got a shop that's dealing with diesel combustible engines, and I'd hate to see us have to spend money to, you know what I mean, adapt and to go into a whole other area when we are abundant with fuels in our nation. So those are the two things I'd just like to comment on.
As the leader of the organization, I have one eye on the future and how it affects us operationally, how it affects us federally, and at the state level. A lot of the alternative, we've moved away from even calling them alternative fuels at this point. It's alternative power. And those are being mandated at the state and federal level. And so as much as we like our clean diesel buses, we have requirements to meet the alternative power initiatives of both Washington State and the federal government. Autonomous vehicles are being tested at other transit agencies. Ben Franklin Transit, just in recent history, was the first agency in the United States to use a reconfigured all-electric bus, which is the one that we have in our fleet now. And we, so once in a while we can be the first to put our toe in the water. But when we do move to the technology of autonomous vehicles, that's not something that we would be a front runner in. Our operators that run our vehicles are protected by federal law, and so the industry at this point, Commissioner Didier, is that drivers would perhaps change to customer service staff on the autonomous vehicles. Their jobs are protected, and so that's all in discussion now, and I'm sure that it will all be regulated by federal and state mandates as well. Does that answer your questions?
Yep. Thank you.
Just a couple of observations since I've been on the board at Ben Franklin Transit, which is somewhere around 12 years, I think, now. When I first got on board, we were buying buses from Seattle for $1 a piece, trying to keep our fleet up. So much of the fleet was inherited from the days when Ben Franklin Transit was originated. And as you know, with the revenues going down and everything, it was just tough to keep up. But so that was quite a, I don't know how many we ended up getting, 10 or 12 of them, it seems like, from Seattle. So, and then also in my time I've been here, the Wi-Fi has been added to all the buses, and an app, a phone app that you can dial in your route, and it'll tell you when that bus will be there. So there's been a number of technical upgrades also in Ben Franklin Transit. So, Gloria, thank you so much.
Thank you all for having me this morning.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, just one other question occurred to me. Again, not taking a position, just interested in your perspective. The service area currently is listed as 300,000 people, 616 square miles. Do you think that for our area that that's about right? Is it too little? Is it too big? I mean, just trying to get a sense. I'm sure you've worked with transit organizations in other communities, and I haven't.
Again, we operate in what is called a urbanized zone area, UZA, and that is dictated by the federal government. And so our UZA is 616 miles, which includes the Hanford campus, and we're just about at 300,000 in that UZA area, the population.
So you said that's dictated by the federal government. If we wanted to make this bigger, does that pose a problem?
I believe that the boundaries change per the census in the census years, so just depending on population and size and growth.
Okay. Thank you.
If I could, one more question, Gloria. I'm looking at that second slide where revenues and expenses, and for the public input for their information. Revenues were $45,305,000. Expenses was $40,400,000. Do you anticipate with the excess of $5 million that we might see a reduction in our sales tax to get more in tune with the expenses to the revenues, being that we're surplus in $5 million?
What this really represents, I think we budgeted just over $43 million for both expenses and revenue. As you know, we had a stop of a third-party provider the last quarter of 2018, and so we came in under budget, as well as a higher anticipated sales tax in 2018 as well. And so we predicted 43, it came in at 45, so that is the spread. This slide really, it shows you from an operating, and what we have been doing and will continue to do is that any excess in revenue that we receive from sales tax, we have been building our reserve funds. We have been replacing our fleet to a standard state of good repair, and then we have reserve accounts for future fleet purchases, capital projects, and fuel. As you know, we do not bond like other jurisdictions, and so we pay as you go. We're on a cash basis.
Would you mind sharing with the public what do we have in reserve funds right now?
I believe I have the, let me see, I think I have as of March, for our operating reserves, we hold 6 months operating reserves. That's about $9 million. For our fuel reserves, we have $1 million reserve. Fleet replacement, we have about $6 million. And our non-fleet capital reserves, we have about $5 million.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Got it? Gloria,
Thank you again.
Okay, we'll be moving on to a closed record hearing, and I think Nicole is going to take us through this, please.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm here to present today to you a revised resolution, which is for the closed record appeal hearing for CP 2019-02, which is the request for a continuation of a conditional use permit for the Mesa mine. And we presented on this on April 9th, and the board determined that further review is necessary. So we've returned now, as I mentioned, with a new resolution. Specifically, we've changed proposed condition of approval number 10. We deleted that one. Number 17 was modified, and that had to do with transferability of the permit. And we've also added a disclaimer titled Responsibility of Permittee. We did not have to change any of the findings of fact. It's just changes in the conditions of approval to meet the concerns of the board. And one thing I wanted to bring up is that there was some desire to have some signage at the site. We ran it through Risk Pool, and they had given some responses on this, and that's why we came up with that clause, which was titled Responsibility of Permittee. So again, this is a closed record appeal hearing, and as such, the operators of the mine are in the audience, as well as Justin Burlock from JUB. I don't think I pronounced your last name quite right. If there's any questions from them on the contents that are in the record. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Commissioners?
Refresh my memory. What was number 10 that we withdrew?
We had actually had two different statements about transferability.
Okay.
And so number 10 came out because it was redundant, and number 17 got refined to say that it's not transferable.
Okay.
That was a week ago. I can't remember everything.
everything.
That's 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago. Can't remember that.
Yeah. What'd you have for breakfast there, Commissioner? So, just curious, why did we add responsibility of permittee as opposed to an additional condition of approval? And is there any significance in the administrative handling of the difference between the two? Is one more enforceable than the other? Does one have a different application?
It's not really a condition of approval. It's more of just a statement about the issuance of the permit, and it's a risk management kind of statement for the county to make. It's not tied to any finding of fact, and so it wouldn't be appropriate to have it as a condition of approval, but it's still in the record.
Have we had any input from our legal counsel as to the enforceability of this clause as opposed to it being a condition of approval? The reason I ask is if it's not a condition of approval and somebody opts not to comply with it, then there might be penalties associated with that, but probably not revocation of the permit because it's not a condition of the permit being issued. In my mind, it ought to be a condition of approval, and the basis in fact is that we had information presented that the public occasionally uses it in their own testimony. There were occasions when there were rock falls, and that there was no signage at the site, and there was direct public access without any gates or barriers. So I think there's lots of findings of fact that would support this as being a condition. And again, I'm concerned about the fact that if it's not a condition of approval and it's just a statement of principle, that it doesn't have the same enforceability.
Yeah, so it could, if you wish to add it as a condition of approval, we can certainly do that. We can just change it to number 18 and get you a copy.
Well, Mr. Chairman, that would be my recommendation, not because I know the legal distinction in great detail, but because this is outside our normal practice, and I think if it were challenged, it would beg the question.
But even so, that it says by accepting this issuance of the permit that they're required to.
Also, the direction we got from legal said that the risk pool recommended that we add a clause that requires the permit holder to accept full responsibility for all liability issues regarding the site.
Sure, and I get that.
Yeah.
I also think that the risk pool deals in more general terms than we do, and they don't regularly deal in land use actions. So, barring objection from our legal counsel, I'd say it ought to be a condition of approval. It puts it on equal footing with all the other enforceable conditions, and to not put it that way, if nothing else, begs the question of its enforceability.
Yeah. If you so desire and you want to direct it, that would be condition of approval number 18.
Well, it takes at least 2 commissioners, but that's my preference.
Okay, yeah. I would say that we could certainly furnish you a revised resolution, probably by the end of the meeting that you could all sign.
And as for the other input, this addresses all the concerns that I had 2 weeks ago, so as long as that one is added as a condition, I'm good.
Good, thank you.
I can agree with that, number 18 as a condition. So, I think you have a resolution there, Commissioner, that we can sign, and then Nicole can bring the addition back to us.
Yeah, it was just fine.
I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
Do you want me to put 18 next to that box and just print it out, or do you want to do other?
That's fine. That would be great. Thank you.
Okay, everybody ready?
Yeah.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've moved for approval of conditional use permit 2019-02 to renew an expiring conditional use permit, which is approved under COP file 2003-19, which was County Resolution 2004-105, and allow the continued operation of a 100-acre gravel pit at the site with the stipulation and board consent that the item presented to us today under responsibility to permittee be re-identified as condition of approval number 18, and the rest of that text can remain unchanged.
I second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So,
Thank you very much.
okay, thanks. We have Derek up for a public hearing. Short Plat 2019-03.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is an appeal of a preliminary approval. Second, got to make sure I got my stuff right here. Yes, this is a public hearing for a appeal of a preliminary approval for a short plat to divide one parcel into 4 parcels. And the issue being appealed is the preliminary approved access. So, kind of the background is that this is, again, preliminary approval for a short plat application, SP 2019-03, requested by Gloria Pardini and Kathleen Moore, seeking to subdivide one parcel located in a portion of Section 13, Township 10 North, Range 28 East, West Meridian, Franklin County, Washington. Property is generally located west of and along Columbia River Road. It is further described as being located in Farm Unit 10, Irrigation Block 1. There is no assigned site address. Parcel number is 126-200-146. Property comprises approximately 26.03 acres, and the applicant seeks to divide it into 4 new lots. Proposed lots 1 through 3 would be approximately 1 acre, and the remainder lot would be 23.15 acres in size. Property zoned RC1 Rural Community Zone. And again, the appeal regards whether the applicant has the right to use the proposed access for the new lots being created.
Derek, is that the only basis on the appeal?
Correct.
Okay.
Per Franklin County Code 16.32090, appeals of an administrative decision relating to a short plat may be made to the Planning and Building Department. When an appeal is received, a public hearing with the Board of County Commissioners will be scheduled. The appeal must be made in writing, filed together with the appeal fee listed in Chapter 15. The appeal must or shall be filed with the Planning Director within 10 working days from the date on which the decision was rendered. If not, the decision of the Planning Director is final and no final further appeal may be made. The written appeal shall include a detailed explanation stating the reason for the appeal. The decision of the Board of County Commissioners shall be the final action. So, Mr. Olson did appeal who had standing. He commented during the initial comment period as well as provided the appropriate application and everything to appeal the preliminary determination when he was notified of that decision. The county's decision on the application may be appealed by a party of record with standing to file a land use petition in Franklin County Superior Court. Such petition must be filed within 21 days after issuance of the decision per Chapter 3670C RCW. Notice was sent to all landowners within 1 mile of the property on February 21st, 2019. The only public comment received was from one Lynn Olson, expressing concern regarding the proposed properties using the access indicated in the application. The Planning Department staff reviewed the application materials, researched the history of the access easement, and determined that the short plat should be approved. Notice of the preliminary approval was sent to those parties that provided comment, including Mr. Olson. On March 28, 2019, he appealed the preliminary approval for short plat 2019-03. So after receiving Mr. Olson's appeal, Planning Department staff reviewed the application materials again and coordinated the research into the history of the access easement with the Public Works Department and Franklin County Prosecutor's Office. Based on this review, we stand by our recommendation to approve the short plat.
So, Mr. Chairman, I know we're going to be doing a public hearing in a minute, but if I may, a couple of preliminary questions for Mr. Pratt. Okay with that?
Yeah, this actually is not a public hearing. It's just an appeal.
An appeal hearing.
Well, the subject is public hearing on a quasi-judicial item.
Yeah.
So I think there is room. It's not a closed record appeal.
Correct.
assuming that there are people here who would want to offer some input to the board, but if someone knows otherwise, please feel free to
No,
correct me.
You're correct.
Am I correct? Okay.
Yeah, it's an appeal hearing. This is my first one here, so it's a little...
Sure. Yeah, it's different than the one we just did, which is
Process-wise.
a closed record hearing.
Exactly.
And this has not been to us before because it was handled administratively, and then
Correct.
there was an in-house appeal, and so this is our first hearing of it, and that's why it's open. So you made reference to access easements. Recollection, the surveys reference a right-of-way, and it's been a while since I've looked at it, but I think, does the deed refer to an access easement, a right-of-way?
It is a private access easement or a private drive.
Is that the language in the deed? Do you recall?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We'll probably get more input on
Yeah.
that in a minute, but as I'm sure you know, an easement can be for a variety of things, whereas a right-of-way is permission to travel across somebody's land. So that's why I'm parsing down to try and find out what the documents actually say. Ultimately, it's probably going to be a legal question about whether or not that access can be shared with other people. And presumably, if all that land were just simply being sold to a new owner, that right could transfer. But divvying it up into multiple other users, I think, is maybe where the question is. I guess we'll find out. Did you get input from our civil legal staff?
I did, yes.
Okay, maybe you could.
And that's included in the packet as well.
Maybe you could summarize that for the benefit of all.
They concurred with our interpretation, as well as Public Works staff that reviewed the documents that we had, which is approximately 8 different deeds going back to 77 when the original plat was created, and then following that trail. And based on us following that trail, again, is what we based our decision on. There was no exclusionary language or specific dedicated language that we interpreted. It was a general public use access easement as well as utilities.
General public?
I'm sorry, it was okay, hold on. See, we're starting to get into the specific languages of the individual deeds.
Well, you know me,
Yep.
Derek. I like details, and I not only want you to be specific, I kind of expect it.
So we start in the packet, and it's going to be, I should have numbered these. I'm sorry, it's Appendix A, which is numbered to 16 is the section, and then it's going to be the first plat. The other ones are the comments received, basically the email and the response between me and Public Works and me and the legal department. So then we have 77-33, and it states, to the use of the public forever, all streets as indicated on this plat. Then
Which
30
plat,
foot.
which plat is that you're referring
I'm sorry,
to?
77-33 should be the first plat that shows, or the first easement document.
Okay, so I don't have that in front of me. Just if you would tell me what that is.
Oh, this is the original short plat, creating 2 properties. And there's a 30-foot private road and utility easement coming off of Columbia River Road.
Okay, so it's a dual easement, private road and utility?
Utility easement, correct.
It is not a dedicated
Roadway.
roadway?
No.
Now, it states, declare and dedicate to the use of the public forever all streets as indicated on this plat. So when you look on the plat, there's a street indicated. You've got Columbia River. Oh, wait, that's the river. Never mind. Sorry, wrong direction. But the only road, there's 2 roads. You got Road 68, which is now, I believe, Columbia
Columbia River Road, right.
Road. And then there's also indicated on here 30-foot private road and utility easement down
Okay.
the south.
Okay, so that's an important distinction. The first one you referred to when you cited public is now Columbia River Road. Clearly, that's public. The second one is a separate issue. That's a 30-foot combined utility easement and private road.
Correct.
Okay, and that's out of the deed?
Yeah, and that's, if I recall correctly, that's the creation of the current property where Mr. Olson's residence is.
And
So
do we
it's-
have anything that speaks specifically to who the grantee and grantors are for that right-of-way? That private road, sorry.
In this, no. It just states, like I said, that know all men by these present that I, the undersigned owner of the lands platted and shown hereon, declare and dedicate to the use of the public forever all streets as indicated on this plan. In witness thereof, I have said my, so that's why when we review the record, we don't see any specific dedication.
Do you think that 30-foot is a street?
Yeah. I mean, it's a private street, but it's a street. It says it's a road.
Well, that's kind of where the push comes in because of...
If it's a road, then why isn't our county maintaining it?
We have many private road easements that exist out there, and it starts getting more complicated as the properties start to develop and change. So this is just the beginning. It starts morphing further through the deed.
When I read through these documents, it was put in for access to parcel B. And now parcel B is owned by Mr. Olson. He owns parcel A and B, and he put him in for that, and utilities have to have access. But is this not Mr. Olson's private property? Is this split between the two properties, or is this all on Mr. Olson's property?
It has now been completely segged off of these. And that's why I'm saying it starts getting more complicated. In this circumstance, it's pretty straightforward. Then it starts moving forward through time. It morphs to where instead of being part of this overall plat, it becomes segged off. So now it is separate from the property and south of the Pardini property line.
So Mr. Olson's not paying taxes on it anymore?
No, he is. No, this is the Pardini and the Moores. The Pardini Moore properties are not paying tax on it.
Right.
But Mr. Olson is, because it's still dedicated as an easement. It was never converted.
Right.
I think the underlying question, I'm not sure I got your answer, is who owns the dirt
At this point, Mr. Olson
where the
does.
right-of-way exists?
Mr. Olson has
all
ownership
the
of
way
the
out to
property.
Columbia River Road.
As far as, yeah, that's what it's a private it's a private road easement, and unfortunately, I mean, for me, because it's hard for me to wrap my head around the easement and the right-of-ways, that's not an uncommon practice. We have a lot of roads that are county roads that are also partially road easements that have not converted over to full right-of-ways.
I have a real concern there. I got a good friend up in North County that built a shop, a farm unit, put a mobile home on, and used the irrigation right-of-way, irrigation road to access.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he went to build a new home, and obviously he must have needed a loan or something to build a new home, and he could not use. Of course, Skivid's not going to give you a dedication to it.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to put his own road in to get to, he had to take part of his field and put his own road in because he couldn't get access to the irrigation road.
Mm-hmm.
This, to me, is the same difference.
There's also a letter in here that's from Glenn Clifford, and specifically stating the fact that I, Glenn Clifford, and my father used the property road easement for our farming operation of this parcel. And I believe if I was to ask Mr. Olson, he probably would allow him to use it for their farming operation. But when you start putting residences in there and the amount of traffic that's going to be created, it's going to put an undue pressure on his private driveway. And we have to respect private property rights.
All I can go by is the record that I have before me, and things like that. And So when we look at the rules and when we look at the record that we have, it's a pretty, this is not an unusual interpretation of what these deeds all mean and where they fall out. Generally speaking, and I'm not saying all the time, but generally speaking, when a easement document is created, it is, and it's to a specific party or to guard against a specific action, those are articulated in that thing. Otherwise, it is generally, they utilize this general language, and and that's how it's been interpreted throughout the whole document. As we go through all those documents we reviewed, the language continued. We did not see language that specifically excluded the use by the public or a specific exclusive use language in the documents, and that's what we were basing our decision on.
So it seems to me, I don't want to get into a bunch of personal examples, but I have had some experience with easements that are identified to a particular lot for a particular purpose. Mm-hmm. This one doesn't seem to be quite so specific.
Correct.
But it appears what we know, or what we think we know, is that there is land owned by Mr. Olson, and over top of that exists either a right-of-way or an access easement. I don't believe they're exactly the same, frankly, but they're close enough for this case. Well, you can have an easement for a variety of purposes.
Correct. Yep.
And so what the deed actually stipulates as to what the easement grants and from whom and to whom matters. Right-of-way over a strip like that is for right of passage or travel across it. It's more narrow in my view. It's a type of easement. But we don't need to get into all that. What I'm really curious about is how that right-of-way was established and what rights were granted to the property that is now attempting to be subdivided. Because if those rights are granted to the new owner of that property for their personal use and access as opposed to commercial use, or if it's granted to them for their heirs and assigns, that would be different. In this case, they might subdivide land and assign it to people. So I think the language of those documents is going to be key, whether we figure it out here or whether it ends up in Superior Court. I don't see anybody from our civil legal staff here this morning.
Teresa's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. You see, your counterpart always sits right there. Sorry. At some point, I'm going to ask you to weigh in about that language, and now that I know you're here, I'm going to stop. Thanks.
Commissioners, I think both Derek and I can see that where your positions are, and we're comfortable, I think, with either a continuing out or a denial. We are not comfortable with being placed in the middle between these two parties. They are neighbors, and they should work this out, whether through mediation or litigation, but I don't like the county being placed in the middle. You had asked what the language was in the 77 plat. We can discuss that, but again, as I said, I'd rather that the parties work it out before the county moves on. The language is...
I would too, but we're here because they haven't. So right. I think we have to look at the language and get our best legal opinion as to what rights are granted by that and judge from there. And if it turns out that we're wrong and the courts decide otherwise, then that's the process.
And I don't know, Derek, if you can put up the 77 on the screen at all. But what it reads is, Mary Gillum in 1977 dedicated to the use of the public forever all streets as indicated on this plat. There are only two streets. One is Road 68, that there's a specific notation that says dedicated road next to Road 68 or Columbia River Road. And the other is the flagpole, which I think is a helpful descriptor. And it's indicated private road and utility easement. So those are all streets. That's one way of looking at it. But there are other ways of looking at it, obviously.
And for those that are not acquainted, when you reference flagpole, you mean a long strip of land that runs along both parcels. You know that, I know that, not everybody does. So.
Right, so if the flag itself, the pennant, the flag is the portion that's abutting the river, then there's the pole that comes out, which is the private road that attaches Mr. Olson's property to Road 68. So there's the private road and there's Road 68. And those are the only streets on the plat, and it says all streets. But it also says one indicates one is dedicated and the other one is private and utility easement. Then we have indication that the other portion, the property between Mr. Olson's property and Road 68 has been using that road, whether it's by permission or whether it's by interpretation of this language or whether it has become a prescriptive easement. It's really something more for the courts to determine.
I understand. Who did you say has been using it? The public or the other landowner?
The landowner that is between the road and Mr. Olson's property.
Okay.
It says that they've been using it for access of farm equipment. So it's been used by someone other than the flagpole owner.
And I haven't heard anybody complain about that. I think the question is whether they can further assign those access rights to these additional parcels that they're creating. So
yeah, and I don't know that we have that record to know if it's permissive, which would then...
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting to, is I think that language is pretty key. If they were to build, for example, homes on those three parcels and their family members all lived in them, it's still the same family of owners. Imagine that if the land was in a trust and there were three kids living there, it's still the same owners. And so I can see a scenario where they actually could use it, and I could also see a scenario where they're selling it to other private individuals, and it's a question whether or not they have the right to assign that access right. I understand you're also saying that it's identified in the plat as a public street, but I'm not sure whether or not legally that applies until such time it's been developed as a street, and to whom that was granted, whether it was the county or the landowner. So a lot of legal questions that I'm not qualified to answer. So just sharing my thoughts.
Right. I can see a court going either way. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking at this letter from this firm of Walker, High, Meehan, and I believe we have one of the attorneys here today, Mr. Walker. Yeah, and I read through this, and there's a lot of court cases here that are implying that this is a private roadway. You put a lot of court cases in this brief that you gave us. Would you mind coming to the mic? Yeah, he can talk, right?
I don't want to open the public hearing.
It's open. No?
No, you didn't open it.
Oh, we didn't.
There are some clarifying questions that Commissioner Peck was asking before the start of the hearing, and I think we got a little...
Okay, we will open this public hearing. I was under the understanding it was an appeal hearing, but it had public hearing on the agenda. So please, we'll open it as a public hearing.
So would you mind? Please. Yes, because you... Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Because you've documented a lot of court cases here, and you went through a lot of research on this. Maybe you can answer our question.
So we
have a seat.
Get up so we can get on the recording.
Go ahead, just sit there. It's probably going to be easier. Sorry.
And you're not legally required to tell us your name or where you live or anything else, but we'd appreciate knowing who you are and what your interest is.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Craig Walker. I'm with the law firm Walker, High, Meehan, and Eisinger in Richland. And we're here on behalf of Lynn and Julie Olson, who own the two lots along the river and who have enjoyed using their driveway almost exclusively since the time they first started living there. They certainly acknowledge the neighborly accommodation that has been made for farming, and they've never had an issue with that. But they come here today through my argument, essentially that staff report can't change private into non-private. That private word's there today as it was when that plat was created in 1977. If it means anything, it means private. When that plat was created, the language in the dedication block, I think if you look at these short plats, that's common language. The real question is was she trying to override private, the use of private on that easement description? Or was she saying that it was I'm calling it private, but I mean dedicated. That makes no sense. And if you look at what happened in 1977, it's pretty clear what she was trying to accommodate. She was trying to give Lot 1, which is now owned by the Olsons, a right to get to the road. And if that's all we had, maybe there would be some uncertainty in all this. But if she was wanting other people to enjoy that same private road in the same private way, she can't take away the fact that it was noted as private, but she wouldn't sell the flag pole to Mr. and Mrs. Olson if he wasn't trying to confirm the language in this 77 short plat. So to me, it's reflective of what she's done going forward as what the intentions of the parties were at that time. And no matter how hard we try, the word private is always going to be on this plat, and it was always something was to be enjoyed by someone. Now, Mr. Peck has observed that sometimes we have easement documents that multiple pages that explain the purpose of an easement or a roadway. This is a private road and utility. And now, private might actually modify both the word road and utility. I don't know, but it seems to me that was probably the intention. But usually there's much more descriptive language in terms of this parcel is the benefit parcel, this parcel is the burden parcel. We achieve a purpose clause within it. It's for farming, it's for development, it can only be used for these purposes, and it can't be used for anything else. Derek, who was kind enough to supply us with the staff report and whatever we asked for, and I thank him for that, observed that there's no language restricting the use. Well, if private doesn't restrict use, I don't know what word does. That's about as restrictive as you can get. Private roadway. Lots of plats, you'll see them. I've seen hundreds of them myself. They'll say access. That's all they say is access. Not even any more than that. And then you got a question is, well, gee, is that public access? Is that private access? Is it supposed to be for a farming use? Is it supposed to be for development use? Is it supposed to be for some other use? But we don't have that here. We've got the word private that modifies the word road. What does that mean? If it doesn't mean Lot 1 was the intended beneficiary of this gift. Now, had she wanted to somehow convey the message that the Pardini parcel was also a user of the road, then why didn't they sell it without the flagpole? Because if it was dedicated, didn't need to have the flagpole and pay taxes on the flagpole or maintain the flagpole or do anything. He could have just drove to the corner of his property and it was all the responsibility of someone else. But in the subsequent conveyances, it all identifies and is consistent with what was given to Mr. Olson, which was the pole. And so it's for that reason, and maybe as much as anything, it's frustrating for the Olsons to see 1,000 foot of frontage in front of this Pardini parcel, any and all of which could be used to get to their back lots. And instead, they want to use his driveway? How does that happen? And is this really the forum in which this dialogue should be taking place? And we've got a private dispute, counsel, now between two neighbors. The Pardinis obviously have a position in this, but I don't see that they have. It's not a matter of undisputed use. Why are we going here? What's the purpose in stealing? It's a taking, as far as Mr. Olson's concerned, of his private property for the use and enjoyment of somebody else without getting any compensation. Plus, he'll probably have to grade it more times. There's 3 lots now, but that other piece, Lot 4, within the proposed short plat, this is all 1 acre stuff out there now, and it is someday going to be other lots in there, almost assuredly. And then all those people going to be able to tag along on this easement? It just doesn't square with the history of this parcel. And we're here to argue rather vigorously that the staff report doesn't support the conclusion that this is available access. I didn't get a chance to ask Derek, but there was another issue in regard to this that came to my mind is in the short subdivision statute. pardon me, in the subdivision statute, generally there's a rural lot access 16-12-040, and I didn't get a chance to talk to you about this, Derek, and so maybe there's some explanation apart from what I've already said, but it says for lands outside a designated urban growth boundary, the following access standards apply. No more than 2 lots shall be served by a private easement, which is the exclusive means of access to the lots. This limited deviation to the standard may be reviewed by the Board of County Commissioners. It's not within the short subdivision subordinance, but the purpose of the short subdivision ordinance is to allow for an abbreviated or expedited review for 4 or fewer lots meeting the zoning and subdivision requirements established in the Franklin County Zoning Standards and Subdivision Ordinance. So seemingly this incorporates that standard, and by this standard and these rules, as I just looked at them here in the last 24 hours, it seems like there's a 2-lot rule in the first place. So why are we going here? And the Olsons are frustrated that they really kind of just got rolled over on this, and it isn't right, and of course they don't feel like this is the place where it ought to be resolved, but we're here, as Commissioner Peck has observed, and so they oppose not the division of the property. Exactly. He doesn't have any problem. They don't have any problem with the platting and division, and they understand they're in a RC1 or whatever the zone is out there that allows for division of properties. They expect it to come. They just don't want their driveway to be used to develop other people's property, and there's nothing in the record that would support. I mean, there's some old dock deeds, none of which are actually in your record. The older deeds talk about easements, but they never talk about developing the property. It all is consistent with Mr. Clifford's note that, yeah, you could use it for farming. It's a neighborly accommodation. That's what we do, is we let our neighbors use our driveways when they need to. They shouldn't have to be afraid of losing their rights by virtue of being a good neighbor. Anyway.
So, Mr. Walker, a couple questions. Who constructed that road, that driveway?
I don't know the answer to that. Mr. Olson might know.
I'd only be speculating that the Gillums did.
Oh, okay. And I drove by there this morning, I noticed Mr. Olson's mailbox, pretty pronounced, big, is at the corner of his property, and the driveway is to the south of it.
Correct.
In your letter that you sent out here, the owners of Parcel C have reasonable access to their property all along 68 Columbia River Road. And then the law in this state is well settled that the fee to the street rests in the owner of the abutting property. And you stated some court cases here. So I went out there and looked at it. They got the ability to build their own driveway down to those lots, right next to it or on the other side of the property. There's no landlockedness here. There's no way that they're going to be restricted from Columbia River Road. So I think that if they can't resolve this, I think that private property rules the day.
Thank you. Other questions?
So the reference to neighborly accommodation, somebody put that in writing somewhere, said, sure, you can use it for this purpose. So there's no adverse possession issues or anything that crop up later?
No, actually, Commissioner Peck, the law's kind of become a little clearer in that area. It used to be that neighborly accommodation and suddenly it became an adverse use. Well, there's now a presumption of permissiveness that's associated with neighborly accommodations so that people aren't fighting over these things like they once were, and you don't have to, you know.
Well, I get all that. The reason I'm asking is because if there were an accommodation, one, that solves it more dramatically, but the other is that if there were an accommodation, the strict language of that might be of interest too. But we can set that aside because I think we both agree that that's an unlikely path. Just kind of working through the logic of it. Certainly there's access for the Pardini property and any sublots to be developed off of 68, so it isn't that they're effectively landlocked and can't get access. They probably need a new county approach. I think and I'm running through this so that if there's anything that I've got in my mind that you disagree with, you can let me know. I'm trusting you will. that the land and the flagpole is owned by Mr. Olson, that it is labeled as a right-of-way. It is labeled as a private road also. I mean, on the surveys, it shows as a right-of-way. It's a private road. There is apparently a deed from 1977 that refers to two transit pathways, let's call them. One is now Columbia River Road, and the other is this flagstick, and it refers to them as public streets. What overcomes that?
I'm not aware of a deed that is in this record that showed.
And maybe we could ask Ms. Chen. I think weren't you reading? What was it you were reading from that referenced public street?
Oh, she was reading from the plat.
I wish we could pull it up. It's in the materials. It's 77, I think, 33, and the language was.
Can't quite pick you up.
It's attached to my letter.
Yeah, it's attachment B of the appellant's letter.
It's that right.
That's it right there. You're looking at it. It's the plat.
It's kind of small, but it says Mary Gillum dedicated to the use of the public forever all streets as indicated on this plat.
Her cohort, they split the days. There's actually two consulars, but the second consular splits with another gal, so they're not 100%. Well, evidently the superintendent came back and said that they are now required to pay full benefits for any time, whether it's 3 hours a day or 8 hours a day. They're required to pay full benefit. All right, we are back in session, and we got the machines up working again at this point. Okay. Got this other recording, both recordings going. Thank you. All right, Carly, now we can.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning for the board's consideration, I have a paid time off and updated sick leave policy. As the board knows, as we've discussed over the course of the last several months, a number of our collective bargaining units have moved from a delineated leave system that has specific buckets of leave for sick leave, vacation, and personal leave, and have moved toward a paid time off system, which puts those leave accruals into a single bucket that allows the employee the freedom to decide how to use their leave. Again, as I outlined in the in the ASR and the read ahead, most of our collective bargaining units have gone to this. So today, the request is to align the non-bargaining employees in the county with the leave system, similar to what our bargaining units have adopted. We have set a June 1st effective date on this to give a little time for non-bargaining employees to ask any questions. Obviously, non-bargaining employees don't get the same benefit that those bargaining unit employees do by getting to review these things before and vote on them. So this will give a buffer of time for those non-bargaining employees to ask any questions and get acclimated with the policy, as well as consideration for workload in the auditor's office right now and the workload associated with the conversion of these, the leave program for the non-bargs. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions, gentlemen? I think we've gone over it pretty well in the past.
Yes, there's nothing new in this policy that hasn't been discussed in the context of some other bargaining units going to it. The one difference we have is we will still have a non-bargaining sick leave policy that applies to those employees who are eligible to accrue PTO and who we have statutory obligations to provide sick leave. So those would be our less than full-time employees as well as the district court judge.
So one question on the district court judges, it says that the maximum carryover is 25%, not to exceed 240 hours. Is that the way it is for all positions?
That's essentially the way it is. That carries over from the maximum carryover for less than full-time employees still getting sick leave is, I believe, 40 hours,
40.
Which is our statutory obligation there. For the district court judge, it's equivalent to what's afforded now and equivalent to what would be the parsed out previous sick portion of what is under PTO. So it's consistent with the package that we have now.
So if I understood, the max carryover for a part-time, non-barred employee is 40 hours.
Yes.
For the district court judge, it's 240 hours.
Yes.
Am I right so far? Okay, and the 200...
No, it's 960 hours for sick leave, which is equivalent to what it is now.
But the cash out is 240
The
hours.
cash out is 240 hours, which is 25% of that, again, consistent to what it is now.
Okay. All right.
Are you caught up with all your bargaining units at this point?
Yes, so all of our contracts have been settled. The board signed the last one, the Sheriff Support Specialist, last week. So we do not have any open contracts right now. We do have an opportunity for unions to request a bargain over a proposed payroll change that will be coming to the board in the next several weeks right now, but until we have a number of contracts that will be open for wages only in 2020.
And are you trying to get away from, I noticed some changes in a 37.5 compared to 40. Are you moving towards a 40 with most of them?
The board has requested we move in that direction. I know we've had some conversation about it. We did do that with the Sheriff Support Specialist.
That's where I read it.
Which were the last group of employees in the Franklin County Sheriff's Office that were not 40-hour employees. So we did move that. Obviously, there's a cost to this. So, it's something we're exploring with, the different units, but ultimately, I think is a budgetary question as well.
Right. Any further? Thanks, Carly.
Mr. Chairman, move for approval of Resolution 2019-128 entitled Adopting Franklin County Paid Time Off and Sick Leave Policies as presented by HR.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Our point in time of the agenda for public comment. Any public comment this morning? Seeing none, let's want to pay the bills.
Mr. Chairman, we have two items this morning. One is payroll, one is fund expenditures. We'll start with payroll. Move for approval of salary clearing and emergency management payroll in the total amount of $984,856.29. As presented, note for the record, has been reviewed and signed by two reps from the auditor's office.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And next we have fund expenditures. Move for approval of fund expenditures as presented in a total amount of $246,690.22. Again, $246,690.22. And note for the record that this has been reviewed by the county administrator and two representatives from the auditor's office.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That moves us on to consent agenda. We had 8 listed. We paid 7 and 8, so we are asking for a motion for resolutions 1 through 6.
Okay, Mr. Chair, we move for approval of consent agenda items 1 through 6 on our agenda for today.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think while we're doing that, Keith, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First item is a matter of official business of requesting the board to sign a certificate of appreciation and a letter You are all aware, I'm sure, that Pat Austin, who has been the Superior Court Administrator for a number of years, actually has been working for the Bi-County Superior Court since October of 1998, recently retired from that position. We had invited her and some of her coworkers to participate in this certificate, but due to some reasons she was not able to be here, so I representing her and both the county on her behalf, but recommend that the court acknowledge, or the board acknowledge her service to Franklin County for the October 1998, 20-some years that she's been a contributor to the county, and sign the certificate of appreciation and thank her for her service as she retires.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think a formal motion or resolution is required, but I'm just going to assume that there's consensus in the board to sign that for Ms. Austin.
Thank you. Next item, we've already discussed this just a little bit in the meeting. Not that it was presumptive, but we had discussed the idea of having an evening meeting. We've checked your schedules and think that the evening of May 21st should work for us. We did not take official action on that beforehand, but due to the actions of today's meeting, it sounds like commissioners are online with having that evening meeting on the 21st. I will make arrangements with the security folks to make sure that the security building is open and operating. People will be able to come as they normally would to any daytime meeting. And we will have adequate security in place during the meeting, and keep people from wandering the courthouse and so forth, and make sure that the security of the building is as it should be. So as we build the agenda for the 21st, it will certainly include the item that was put forward today, and any other discussion items that board members would like to add to that agenda. Please let Karen know.
Well, Keith, if I may, I would like to start the discussion on the redistricting of our commissioners' districts. If we could have discussion on that, being that we're opening it up to the public to attend the evening meeting, I think it'd be a great place to start the discussion on the redistricting of our county's commissioner seats.
Anything else, Keith? Did you want to discuss that item, or do you just want me to go ahead and add that to the agenda? Maybe look at the consensus of the board. If no objection, I'm glad to add that to the agenda.
I'm not opposed to having a conversation. I would ask Commissioner Didier what goals or objectives would you have for that meeting for that topic? What are we looking to accomplish?
Getting the consensus of where we're at in population and redrawing the lines with minimal movement so that we keep our 3 commissioner districts pretty much intact, but just moving lines of the population growth at this point in time, which is available through the auditor's office.
So I would offer that happy to have the conversation. The meeting is, of course, not the place to draw boundaries, but I did note that you said to seek consensus for the process going forward. And I'll just say up front that the state law, the statute, specifies what the bases are to be for drawing those boundaries. And in some respects we're in compliance, some we're not. We're way out of balance on the population numbers. And would note that there is a new statute that has been passed that says that the auditor may draw boundaries, but there is no requirement for the auditor to do that. And in this case, I'll just say on the record that the auditor, having been an opponent of a sitting commissioner in the last election, unless he recuses himself from running next time, ought not be the person drawing those boundaries because the outcomes could affect districts. And in that case, I think it ought to be handled out of the county administrator's office. Other than that, I think it's a swell idea and look forward to the conversation.
All right.
Just kind of for informational purposes, I don't know if you need to have a discussion. The state legislature adopted their budget late Sunday night. We're still kind of wading through some of the details. There are some things that I think will have impact on counties. Some language regarding counties being required to regulate short-term rentals, for example, Airbnb type rentals. I don't know that that's a huge issue in Franklin County yet, but in some counties it's a pretty significant issue. But it more or less equates to an unfunded mandate if we're being expected to regulate those. So I've got to do some more research on exactly what's expected and required. It's something I just heard about late last week at the County Administrators Conference. Have not read the specific language of that yet, but plan to do so. But as is usual, there's some surprises and things in the state budget that we wouldn't hope for.
Late night, early morning surprises.
Yeah, but we are doing some analysis to kind of make sure that the impact on the county is accommodated or minimized. And I believe that was all I needed to be briefed the board on this morning.
One more place for public comment. Got something for us, Rocky?
Pardon me?
You have something for us? How did that Wolf meeting?
Actually, my cattle got out and I was able to make the meeting. I guess on the Ben Franklin Transit, the labor surprises me that it's that high. What percentage of the administrative is that 61% labor? How much of the administration, what percentage of that 61% is going to administrative costs?
Here, you can just take this.
All right.
But there's
it was mentioned in there.
71 administrators.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about how much of the payroll is going to administration versus drivers. And I'll tell you, if you look, as I have, not in the last couple of years, but the union bus drivers are, I think, doing quite well for bus drivers. But I get your point.
Well, I can't run my business with the 61% labor cost.
Right. Yeah. No, we're on the same page. I just pointing that there's some other underlying numbers that you're going to find staggering as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we have the wildlife coming to talk to us? I thought it was today.
No.
14th.
That's right.
Okay. Rocky, the wildlife will be here the 14th to talk about the wolves.
Okay. At the commissioner's meeting.
Right. Correct. I was thinking those
Mr. Chairman, just to note in the presentation slides that were presented today from Ben Franklin Transit, indicated there's 330 employees, of which 78% drive and maintain the fleet, 22% are support operations. So a little math, you can probably figure out what that 22% of the 61% is.
Anything else for the good of the board?
A couple questions, Keith.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any schedule of the veterans when they're meeting? I have not seen anything, or
I have not seen a recent update to a meeting schedule, but I'll be happy to find out when their next meeting is scheduled and let you know.
If I could get those emailed to me, because I would like to sit in on them periodically. And the last question is on the review of the administrator. Where are we at on that?
Carly had come up with a draft form that we need to. She'll help us get between the three of us and see what that draft form looks like. And
okay.
Very good.
Okay. Commissioner Peck?
No, good, thanks.
All right. Nothing else. We are adjourned. Thank you.
This is a test. Test, test. 1, 2, 3, test. Clerk station. Microphone 1. Microphone 2. Microphone 3. Microphone 4. Microphone 5. Microphone 6. And the public mic.